Welcome to the Property Corner with myself, Rowan Alexander. On today's episode, we're going to be looking at building plans, the importance of these, and how they are causing a stumbling block to property transactions. So something that we're seeing creeping up more and more often is a transaction being delayed because a seller is not in possession of his approved municipal building plans. To be honest, 9 out of 10 homes that we come across don't have up-to-date building plans, whether it be because someone's built an additional roof covering, changed the usage of a room, made some alterations over time. The majority of homes are not up to date. Something that's being addressed and something that we encourage all of our clients to do is to look up front as to whether they have the approved building plans, and if they don't, to start the process of getting that home up to date in terms of compliance very early on in the process. To give an idea, at the moment, building plan submission and approval can take up to 4 months in the city of Cape Town at the moment. So you can imagine if this comes up at the final hour of a transaction and it delays the transaction for 4 months, there's a lot of people that aren't very happy. So I think the first thing to understand is when building plans are required and whose responsibility it is. So I think let's start with that. The keeping of approved building plans is the owner's responsibility. Very often I see people saying, well, we'll just go down to council, get a copy of the plans, only to get to council, not to have a copy of the plans, or council has a set of plans, but it's not what the owner thought it was. That onus and burden of proof lies on the owner of the property. So always keep and safeguard a good copy of the approved plans. It's important that you do this because if council loses that, it's going to be your responsibility to get it back up to date. When are building plans required? This is something that you're going to need to check with your local municipality and bylaws, as there may be variances with this throughout South Africa. So I think most people understand that when they do major alterations or additions to a property, they require building plans. But I think the part that's often overlooked is when you change the usage of a room. Typical example will be someone builds a new garage on their property and they change the existing garage to, say, a bedroom. They'll often think that because the structure is already on the building plan and there's external walls and it's already on the plan, they can simply just change it into a bedroom without having to submit plans for that portion, and that they only require plans for the new addition. That's not true. When you change the usage of a room, there could be the implication that you need to attain new building plans. Things like ventilation into the rooms, proximity of windows to certain services, things like that may be affected, and that's why you need to go through that process of getting those loans approved or getting those plans approved. Another thing which we often see is people actually enclosing a patio to create something like a braai room, but in the process closing off the natural ventilation to a bedroom. This is something which requires a building plan and often an amendment, adding mechanical ventilation into bedrooms if it is approved. So there can be things that you're not informed of or that you're not aware of that actually require building plans. So I'd always encourage you, get a copy of the latest building plans of your home, keep it on hand because it is your responsibility to keep them. And then also ensure that the usage of the plan actually indicates what the property is being used for. If a living room is changed into a bedroom or a bedroom into a kitchen area, something like that, be sure to check whether that requires an update to your building plans. Other mistakes that people make is assuming that the additions that they make externally don't require any building plans. So things like building a braai, adding a swimming pool, creating a sort of Boma braai area. Depending upon the municipality that you operate in, some of these things could fall under minor works and be excluded from requiring building plans. But Something like a braai could be as technical as if it is simply a braai without a chimney. You might not need a building plan, but the moment you add a chimney and there's a health or safety risk and stuff involved, you may require a building plan. So be sure to check with your local architects who know those regulations and can assist you and guide you in the right way. Another mistake that people often make is to actually proceed with the construction prior to getting building plan approval. And very often it's a sort of case of it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. This is a very dangerous tactic in real estate, because you may be required to remedy your construction to the latest standards. So you may have built a property based on a certain standard, but when you draw up your plans and you submit them to council, only to find that the way in which you've constructed, the materials that you've used, the sort of usage that you've intended has been disallowed. So I'd always encourage you to rather get those plans approved before you start with your construction. Another thing that we often see happening is that sellers say, well, I'll just sell my house in that way. I'll just declare it and declare to my buyer that I haven't got plans for this section of the house or this alteration. And with this sort of perception that it's okay, the buyer will accept that risk and continue. And while you may be able to find a buyer that accepts that risk and sort of goes along with the transaction, the problem that we're seeing more and more often is that the banks are actually stopping that process. So saying, well, we're not going to lend money to a house that's not in, or against the house that's not in accordance with the approved municipal building plans. And you can understand this because their security lies in the structure. If the structure is erected illegally or not in conformance with the local council regulations, that could put their security at risk. So even though you may believe that you can find a purchaser who would overlook these alterations and the lack of building plans, you're probably going to find that throughout this process of valuation and the valuer coming out, they are going to identify potential problems and they will stop the transaction and require you to actually update your building plans before the mortgage loan would pay out. The last mistake I often see people make is submitting the building plan, getting an approved building plan, but never actually getting an occupation certificate in hand. Why is this important? Your building plan is simply a permission to add to your property. So say I want to add a swimming pool. I'll submit a drawing to council showing where it's going to be located, how it's going to be installed, how the plumbing is going to work, how the electrical connections are going to work. All of these things are depicted on that building plan. That then gives me the permission to go and install it in that prescribed manner. But who says that I actually do it in that manner? And that's where the occupation certificate comes in. The occupation certificate is a approval of the additions or the installations being done in line with the approved building plan. Therefore, if you submit a building plan, get an approved plan, and then proceed to build outside of the guidelines of that building plan, your occupation certificate could be refused. So when there have been alterations and additions to a property, be sure that you follow the process in getting that occupation certificate issued. The building inspector will need to inspect at various phases throughout that construction period. And once he's happy and certified that you have done those additions in the way that was prescribed, he will issue you an occupancy certificate. Without an occupancy certificate, the validity of the building plan can be brought into question. Again, these are all tips that I'd like to share with you to ensure that when you actually get to the point of selling your home, these things do not delay that potential transfer process. It could end up costing you a lot of money having to rectify these things at the final hour when you've got the pressure of a transaction weighing on you. So get these things out of the way. It's good practice to ensure that your property is always up to date with the latest building plans. So I hope you found this episode helpful. If you like the content that we're producing, please like and subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you again.